Welcome. Lovely to see you all again. Maybe as we're waiting for people to arrive, let's just come to a settling, gathering. So I find it really helpful to just let my attention drop into my body and feel where the body is touching the earth, and feel how the weight of our body is inviting a kind of slowing down, settling down like a water drop, to where we can rest and settle, where we're sitting. And also, even though we're going to be chanting and listening to some reflections, it's really helpful also to pay attention to our posture. So just as the weight of the body is inviting us down to settle to the ground, our spine, whether we're sitting or lying, can be inviting us to unfold and stretch a little in a kind of awakeness. Whether that's up towards the sky, in however our body allows this. So it's a judging thing. It's like, how do we establish a posture that best supports us to be here? So if we're lying or leaning against a chair, we can feel that out as well. Noticing the sense of gathering here as we're all gathering. Welcoming each other, welcome ourselves. Noticing our listening and our intention in coming here. We're both relaxing and kind of brightening up our listening, our presence, our intention. And also welcoming ourselves, each other, coming together in community here to practice together. Maybe you want to take a few deeper breaths, and we're just letting ourselves arrive. Okay, so really welcome everybody. So there's quite a few people here who by now we know each other, and for anyone who hasn't, hasn't been to a Sunday session or hasn't been to one with me, I'm Sumedha, and I'm one of the core teachers with Sacred Mountain Sangha, and I'm really delighted. I think these Sunday sessions are lovely gatherings, so I'm very delighted to be here. And so how this session unfolds is that we'll do some chanting together. Chanting can be a really beautiful practice to help us to tune into the teachings and tune into a sense of like honoring that which is awake within us, honoring the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. And some of the chants that we'll do are teaching chants. So these have been done over thousands of years, and they can be a very useful way also of reflecting on teachings, because when we chant, a bit like with poetry, we take it in a different way. So we're also using our body, using vibration, and I actually have learned quite a few schemes of teaching through chants. So when I'm trying to remember a list of some teaching, then often I'll remember the chant, because the rhythm and the tone and the beauty, actually, there's a beauty in it. So we'll do some chanting, and I'll give a guided meditation, and then some reflections on Dharma. And today I wanted to talk a bit about two qualities that I've been kind of curious myself how they come together, which are the quality of patience in practice, which is really pretty highly valued in the early teachings. So I'll say some more about that, and the quality of urgency. So myself, I've been curious how these come together, and I think it's a really fruitful exploration. So I'll reflect a bit about that, and then so the main session will be an hour, and then for anybody who wants to stay at the end, so I think at 10 PT time, there's another 15 minutes where we can have questions and exploration together. So, which, if you need to leave before that, you're also welcome to. So let's start with the chanting, and Michael has put the link to the chanting book in the chat, which I think he's just done again. Yeah, which is wonderful, but I'll also share on screen. So for any of you who just want to follow on screen, you're welcome to do that. So. Okay. So can you see that? Yeah, great. Thank you. So we'll start with Namo Tassa, homage to the Blessed, Noble and Perfectly Enlightened One is the translation here. And remembering also that this word Namo can also mean like I return my life. So it can be like just a deep connection with that which is awakened, as well as to the teacher who taught it, the Buddha. But I return my life to that which is awakened. And then we'll go on to chant the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang sama sambuddho nija charana sampanno Sugato lokavidu anutaro purisadhamma sarati sata dewa manusanam Buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjipatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Nyayapatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Samichipatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadidam Chatari Purisa Yugania Tapurisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punya Ketam Lokasati. And then we'll go down to a couple of the teaching chants that are quite different in tone, but linked together actually, in the insights they can help us to realize. So I'd like to chant the 5 subjects for frequent recollection. That is one of the teaching chants, and it's quite a sober, it's pretty Theravadan chant. So and it's reflecting on the sense of actually our vulnerability. So I'm of the nature to age, nature to sicken, nature to die. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me, and that I'm the owner of my karma. So this is quite a sober chant, but the invitation in the center of it is very beautiful. It's to come to the reality of being born in a body and with a heart. So there are certain forms of pain that come with being born in a mortal body, and the invitation in Buddhism is actually to turn around to that. And as we accept these realities, we can actually become more connected and compassionate, both to our own being and to others. So we'll chant this one, and then we'll chant a kind of complementary one on the boundless qualities of heart that can help us to find a way of meeting these realities. So taking it in just as you need to. So if you're feeling vulnerable, just letting it as close or not as close as you need at this time. So I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Thus we should frequently recollect. come down to the chant on page 8, the 4 boundless qualities. So really also taking in that our heart is capable of a real depth of loving kindness, of compassion, of gladness or joy, and of equanimity as we come in a very real way into our human condition. Now let us make the 4 boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with compassion. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued and exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with gladness. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with equanimity. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. So feeling again into our body, feeling the vibrations of the chanting, if they've touched us in any beneficial way. Feeling that movement of the last chant where we're aligning with loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, and that reminder that as unto all as to myself. So as we breathe in, bringing those qualities into our own heart, And as we breathe out, sending them out into this world that we are so much part of, so connected in. Recognizing that in each moment there's this in-breath. We can breathe in, be nourished in our own presence. And as we breathe out, if there's anything we want to share back into this world, we can send that back out. Our care, our attentiveness, our aspiration towards liberation from ways in which we cause harm to ourselves, to each other, to the planet. And noticing as we do this that we're also supported. So notice how the rhythm of our breath invites us to slow down, steady, come into a way of attending that is a little slower, softer. It's the rhythm of the breath can soften and steady our attention. Often our minds are very quick. They're asked a lot to react very quickly. We can invite also our mind to attend to the rhythm of the breath. And to notice there's a different possibility. We can slow down, soften, and enliven our presence here. Just how the breath has this rhythmic quality. Wherever we find it, we don't have to focus tightly on one place if that doesn't work for us. But where do we find our breath? Notice its rhythm. And notice how, in a very tender way, we're very connected through the breath. We're both grounded and very open, nourished. As the in-breath brings oxygen and life-giving properties into our body, and as we breathe it back out, intimately connected into this world, and we can pay attention to our presence here. There's both a stillness and a flowing in our being. And notice how it's easier to tune into this if we invite our attention to slow down. We invite our mind, heart, body together and allow ourselves to connect here. And notice both the slowing down and what that gives us, and also the alertness that helps us to stay in this flowing moment. We're both slowing down and also brightening with a heart that wishes to be present here. In as truthful a way as possible. And we can honor this intention, however it comes through for you. So as we come to the end of the meditation, remembering that this way of listening comes with us, so we can keep tuning into that which is rhythmic, enlivening in our being, that which is awake and listening, and to our embodiment, and we can feel the effect of listening in this way. And stay with us as we open our eyes, as we move, as we engage a little more fully in the outer world. We bring this heart of listening with us. And end the meditation there. So, as I said at the beginning, I wanted to reflect a little around the qualities of patience in practice, which is, the Pali word is kanti, and also the quality of urgency in practice, and the Pali word for that is Samvega. And these, the reason I want to reflect about this is they seem like they may be kind of inviting us in very different directions. And actually it feels like they can meet quite deeply and support each other to help us really deepen into our experience and also keep a certain determination to do that, that it's like coming from a deep place of wishing for, however, what our word is, truthfulness in our heart, or however we wish to express it. So, patience or kanti is classically one of the parami. So this scheme of teachings which are called the perfections, and they're said to help to cross life's floods. So the floods of like wishing, kind of grasping onto becoming, onto non-becoming, onto ways of sensuality that are not helpful to us, and onto ignorance. So that's already quite a big agenda, actually. But on a much more simple and immediate level, when I was in the monastery, often quoted would be this early teaching that says patient endurance is the highest austerity. And like in pre-Buddhist India, or like there would be these tapas practices, so-called austerity practices, where you would kind of be very hard on your body to kind of burn up the different passions and, you know, and all of this. And the Buddha was very much not into physical austerity in that way, as you know. But he did encourage a kind of slowing down and staying still in this patience, which helps us to start to see and let go of things that are harmful that are arising within our mind, or even to get a different perspective on what is arising in our mind. So this quote, patient endurance is the highest austerity, was one that was quite often bandied about in the monastery. And so I have spent quite some time exploring how this might be helpful. And one of the things that I think patience can bring us in practice is that it asks us to take a different approach to our experience, and even maybe start to question deeply what our sense of freedom or liberation is. So sometimes when we come to practice, we can take a sense of liberation or freedom as being, well, we're trying to get free from like unpleasant feeling or that which is difficult, or we're trying to find a space or a way of observing where we can kind of slightly get away from the painfulness of it all. So which can be that thing where you just observe and you don't really sense into what is happening. But actually the Buddha taught that what is really helpful to cultivate in practice in relation to being able to see more clearly and liberate our suffering is a mind that is malleable and wieldy and steady. It has a fluidity to it. And patience very much helps for me to develop this fluidity. So it's almost like we can start to create a steadiness and a pool of presence with our patience that they can then start to receive what is happening in a very different way. And so freedom becomes not necessarily getting rid of unpleasant feeling or slightly standing apart from it, but it's like, well, how can I approach it in a way in which I don't add to suffering, in which I start to understand the ways in which I'm attaching to this that cause harm, and what needs to be listened to within it. So part of how patience does this for me is it asks us to slow down. So a bit like in the meditation, which all of you, I'm sure, know that it can be really helpful to slow down and come to like more steady embodied rhythms that help as our mind comes into those contact with those rhythms. As we give attention to them, our mind soaks them in. So there's a lovely quote by John O'Donoghue that a lot of you know. He's one of my favorite philosophers, Irish philosophers. And in Irish and Scottish and Celtic spirituality, there's this emphasis on learning from nature, which was also there in the forest tradition. And he says, like, be with the slowness of the rain as it falls. Be with the stillness of the stones, and let your heart imbibe those qualities. And as we do that, something in us starts to ground and steady. And patience is part of what helps us to attend in that way. And it's part of what comes back in terms of nourishment to our patience. And so as this happens, we're actually becoming very alive, because we notice we can guide our attention to the places that feel less shouting. So usually our attention gets grabbed about by, oh, this bit wants attention, this bit wants attention. And we're actually learning to slow down and attune in a very different way. And as we do that, we can attune to a kind of alive stillness within us that is able to receive that which is coming. So Ajahn Sucitto, in his book on the Parami, when he talks about patience, he says patience holds us in the present with suffering in a spacious way, encouraging the mind to open. An open mind feels more peaceful in itself, and it more readily sees the causes of suffering. And all that simply through this kind of willingness and capacity to slow down. So we're giving ourselves to that capacity. And as we do that, and we receive, say, a pattern of agitation into that slower space, it's like we notice the kind of movement of it, the momentum of it, and we can hold that. And in holding it means that we're not fueling in the same way. So it kind of breaks step without judging, without beating ourselves up or beating that thing up. It's simply received, but from this place that isn't, the patience is helping it to not get caught in the pattern. And so patience also, I find, builds a lot of inner tolerance to the whole range of feelings. We can feel pleasant, neutral feelings. So often if we're not really wishing to attend, we don't notice things like the breath or the vibrancy of the body or the listening of the heart. We just scoot over them because they're much more subtle, and they're a very, very important part of our experience. And also very often we don't want unpleasant feeling. This is really key. We really don't want unpleasant feelings. So one of the floods that I mentioned at the beginning, vibhava tanha, is the urge to just not exist. And when we hit unpleasant feeling, often we just want to get completely away from it. And one of the very core things for me in the Buddhist teaching is that we're learning how to be with unpleasant feeling in a way that we are not causing more suffering with it. We're starting to understand how we're seeing it in a way that may add to the suffering. What we may need to let go of, and what we may need to listen to. So this also brings a lot of wisdom. So say, for instance, an experience like anger in the heart or in the mind. It's like very often there can be a lot of, if we're caught in anger, we can have a lot of angry thoughts. There's a lot of very intense energy in the body, and it's all very difficult to deal with. And so with patience, for me, if we can both slow down enough to come to some safer spaces in our body, maybe some spaces that aren't so activated, and to start to feel into the sensations of it, and also to feel under that what has been touched, what value has been transgressed, what has been hurt. How might this wish to communicate itself in a way that isn't coming with a harmful energy of anger, but which is using the very real sensitivity that is underneath that, where we know that something has been transgressed. We can listen into that part and maybe let go of the intensity that would cause harm, but still respond to the part that needs to be heard. And this needs patience. This needs time to listen to our processes in this way. Or if we've experienced a loss, or we're experiencing grief, sometimes we really need to give ourselves time to feel into these things, to feel into the loss, how that is, in a compassionate way, without wanting to get rid of parts of it, but also noticing maybe where we're sticking to something that is not for our benefit. So it's not in the frame of judgment, but it's in the frame of like, how do I really need to listen in a way that is beneficial to my heart? And what can I let go of that is not beneficial? So patience really, really helps us to do this. And then, so it also brings us to compassion, because as we can allow ourselves to be in contact with parts of our experience that habitually we would reject, so say a grief or say an anger, we start to know how these things can touch us. And so then there can be this contemplation that actually, just as my own life is precious to me, just as I have this sensitivity and don't wish to experience pain, so this is true for other beings. So when someone else is experiencing a loss, say, or is upset about something, we may have more capacity to resonate with the depth of listening, and that can help to hold some clarity in that situation as well. So it's actually a very deeply compassionate practice to start to listen in this way. And actually Pema Chodron, when she talks about patience, she talks about in Tibetan Buddhism how we're turning suffering into solidarity, because we realize we're not alone in these forms. So it can be a very connected, very connecting experience. And patience for me is part of what helps us to slow down and taste in a non-reactive way. So obviously other qualities too, but this patience is being part of this. And also patience allows us, for me, to move into spaces again, which are non-habitual and which are where we don't know really what's happening. So as we explore and as we grow and as we wish to let go of maybe habitual patterns that are harmful to us, like inevitably we're going to move into spaces where there's more unknown, where we don't have our usual reference points. And that's difficult for us. And so most often what happens in that space is we'll just go back to something that feels familiar. Because it's easier to be with something definite, even if it's a form of suffering, than sometimes it is to be with just not knowing. And patience in the way that it it can bring us down into a slower way of experiencing, say, within the body. And the body's way of knowing is much less conceptually clear than our mind's way of knowing. It's like patience helps us to attune to this way of listening that can be both very alive and very present and very kind of non-grasping. So it becomes easier to hold ourselves in those spaces where we're between. We don't really know what's going on, but something wholesome can be growing. So, Ajahn Chah used to say, it's like, well, if you plant a seed, you can't force it to grow in the time that you want. It's not like, well, okay, you're going to grow in 5 days. It's like, well, you plant a seed and you have to wait and see what that's going to give. And patience is one of these qualities that allows us to be in that waiting with a full-heartedness, with a presence that is still very here, very attentive, very caring, but not forcing. And so very powerful new growths can come through in this way because we're not limiting it through our fixed ideas. So patience is like this. It helps me to come to this slowing, attuning, broadening, meeting. And yet there's something also still very alive here, very kind of sharp, a sort of, not sharp, but alive, a sort of like determination to stay with the truths of experience. So like I was just saying, oh, how do I feel out a loss? Or, and how we give rise to more suffering or not from it. So this very deeply compassionate way of listening. And with that aliveness, I find it very interesting that first quote that I said, patient endurance is the highest austerity. The end of that quote, it says, he is not a true monk who harms another, nor a true renunciate who oppresses another. And so there's this very direct link to learning about non-harming. And so this kind of both opening to presence and the alertness that this requires of us points to this other complementary quality, or that can be complementary, which is Samvega, or urgency. So this is actually something that Thanissaro Bhikkhu says it's not very well known about in the Buddhist teachings, that I don't know whether that's true or not, actually, but it is something that is emphasized very often. And, in the monastery, we used to, we chanted the 5 subjects for frequent recollection. In the monastery, we also chanted 10 subjects for frequent recollection. And one of those is, the days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? So it was like, get on with it. Don't stop, don't be frittering your time away. And also I'm sure you've heard the story of the, precious human rebirth, and that the chances of being born as a human being. And actually, I fully respect, animal life, plant life. I think there's a lot of wisdom in this realm that is not only in the human form, but the story of precious human rebirth is that there's a blind turtle who comes to the surface of a vast ocean once in 100 years, and the chance of the turtle putting its neck through a yolk that is floating on the ocean. That is the chance of being born as a human. So, you know, it's considered fortunate to be born a human being in the teachings. And part of the reason for this is that we both have a capacity for conscious awareness. And actually, the other reason is that we suffer. So in the whole Buddhist cosmology, the devas, who are said to be the divine beings, the gods, that's actually said to be less potentially fruitful, liberating form, because there's less suffering. So there's something very interesting in this for me, that there's how do we hold our suffering in a way that helps us to wake up, and the suffering of others, and how do we live in this human form in a way in which we're alleviating that. So I'm going to read a passage from Thanissaro Bhikkhu on Samvega, which is quite direct, and it's quite cutting. So brace yourselves. So Samvega was what the young Prince Siddhartha felt on his first exposure to aging, illness, and death. It's a hard word to translate because it covers such a complex range, at least 3 clusters of feelings all at once. The oppressive sense of dismay, terror, and alienation that comes with realizing the futility and meaninglessness of life as it's normally lived. So that's number 1. Number 2, a chastening sense of our own complicity, complacency, and foolishness in having let ourselves live so blindly. And number 3, an anxious sense of urgency in trying to find a way out of the meaningless cycle. So basically, those are experiences that point to me to when our heart is looking for something deeper in life. It's looking for a deeper truthfulness, a deeper sense of peace or groundedness, or you can use the word happiness. So this deep thirst to ground more deeply. And Thanissaro Bhikkhu says it to affirm the truth of the heart when it aspires to a happiness that is pure. So I'm not so keen on the words pure and all of that, but what it's emphasizing is that, like, that thirst for a deeper ground. And Thanissaro Bhikkhu also says that part of what Buddhism does when it calls up this sense of urgency is both it gives us some tools to start to deal with the feelings behind it that modern society doesn't necessarily do, when we're feeling that our kind of daily run of life is quite meaningless or harmful, and we're noticing harm in the world, and we're feeling complicit, and we're looking for a deeper meaning. It's like the run of daily life often doesn't meet that place. And the Buddhist teachings actually ask us to turn around to it and see this urgency as a good quality. They say, look, turn around. So like those 5 subjects for frequent recollection. Look, we do age, we do die, we do get sick, we do suffer loss. And we can, within the way we're meeting that within our heart, we can start to accept those truths, but notice what we're adding. Notice what we're adding that may be causing more suffering, more harm. So do those truths lead us to denying and distraction and ways in which we harm ourselves and others, so through consumerism, for example, that we just want to get away from our aging, from our vulnerability, so we consume all these things that then it's really bad for the earth, and we need to take things from each other and be violent to each other. Or can we turn around to that vulnerability and recognize we're in a shared predicament, and how do we not add suffering? So it's a very deep invitation to compassion, actually. And what I really love in the way Thanissaro Bhikkhu talks about it is that he talks about what it's pointing to is to our sensitivity of heart that knows that there are certain truths to life and that wants to find out how to meet them in a wholesome way. So it's recognizing that sensitivity and also asking us to take it deeper. like with the Four Noble Truths. How do we meet our suffering in a way that we don't add to it? Or like the teaching of the first arrow and the second arrow. The first arrow is the pain that comes with being in a mortal body. And the second arrow is how we deal with it. What do we add to it or not? So, then very beautifully, so I'll stop soon, but patience is part of what helps us to meet our suffering. As I was saying in the first part, it's part of what helps us to both slow down into our body, notice both our vulnerability and our aliveness, our embodiedness, and to find out how to meet, say, these realities in a way that there's a real true presence and listening and response. So in this way, both patience and urgency, I think, can work together. And then Thanissaro also draws attention to another quality at this point called Pasada, which are all the mental states that keep Samvega from turning to despair. So as we come to these realities, as we come to our urgency, we can find out that we can live in ways that are not futile and meaningless, that we're actually alleviating harm in as many ways as we can, and we're cultivating greater peace and wisdom and compassion. So I need to end there, but I hope I've given some sense of how these things can dance together, and they're really, really worth exploring. And especially, that part that's the kernel of like really looking to our vulnerability, which can sometimes be hard to accept, but which can, when we wishing for truthfulness, it can turn into a very wholesome motivation. And then we find out the supports that enable us to do that, which include patience, include loving kindness, include many of the qualities covered in the Buddhist teachings. So I'll end there, and anything that was helpful, take it with you, and anything that isn't, let it go. So we've just got a couple of minutes before the end of the session, the hour, where people are welcome to leave if they wish to, or to stay on if you wish to. But also just to say, yes, there will be a recording available of the talk on the YouTube channel, which Michael has put in the chat. And also I wanted to mention that Dawn Mauricio so I'm running a 5-week sacred practice series on the Saturdays that started yesterday and finishes on March the 9th. And when that series finishes, there will be another series called Opening to the Sacred, Steady Mind, Open Heart with Dawn Mauricio that begins on March the 14th. And it's very much about steadying your mind, opening your heart, and developing the wisdom that can, the wisdom and devotion that can help us to meet these very challenging times that we're in. So that's a really beautiful offering that if you want to sign up for that, the details are in the chat and on the SMS website. And Michael has also put in the chat the Dharma details. So as you know, many of the events run by Sacred Mountain Sangha are run on Dharma, which is how teachings have been offered since the Buddha's time. And in a nutshell, if you would like to support these teachings to be able to continue to happen, you can offer some dana to Sacred Mountain Sangha. So dana has a very deep and vast meaning, which includes practice, includes the precepts, and there's also how we give our energy and choose to place our resources to support that which we find valuable. So if you do wish to offer anything, that would be very gratefully received, and the link is in the chat there to SMS. So really, thank you all for your presence and listening and being here. a delight to be with you all. Thank you so much. And yes, and I'm not sure who is coming next week. I'm sure it'll be wonderful. And then I'll be back the following week. So, all right. Take care.